You know, guys, I was sitting here thinking today, after this episode. You know how I said yesterday how The Eminence in Shadow is probably the funniest and fun show that I'm doing this season? And I thought, what show has the most emotion that really, hits you right here in your heart? What is that show this season for me? And it's pretty obviously Mob, especially after this episode. This episode was full of emotion. And rightfully so, as we lead into our series finale next week. Mob is a really incredible show. It really is. But we'll save a lot of that talk for next week. I realized that Mob is definitely the heart and soul of this season, in my opinion. And I'm very glad to be bringing it to you guys. So without further ado, let's just get into it and talk about Mob Psycho 100, Season 3, Episode 11 today, because it was an emotional roller coaster. So our episode begins immediately with Ritsu just sensing something is wrong with Mob, as he can feel that something terrible has happened. As he runs out of the student council room and actually runs to the epicenter of the incident where this happened, as he sees the destruction that Mob has caused. And he finds Mob's bag there. And upon doing that, he sees the car that hit Mob, and he notices the blood, and he realizes, wait a minute, was he in an accident? As the situation gets worse and worse. And as we transition back to Mob, he's still out of control, and everything is looking bleak. But this is where Shizuki drops down and confronts him. As he says, I've come to repay my debt. Sorry, but this is going to hurt a bit. As he starts attacking Mob to try to slow him down even a little bit, but Mob just brushes off the punches, gets in his face, and releases a huge explosion of psychic energy. And as the dust clears, Shizuki says, I thought you might be in a bad mood, but you actually seem rather well. Or rather, you seem like you've been liberated. I guess you've given up on holding back. That in itself isn't a bad thing. But are you really the same person? As he tries to attack Mob again and gets sent flying this time. As Mob is on him again with intense pressure, literally intense pressure this time, as he thinks to himself, to think there'd be this much of a difference between us. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we just hear, don't get your ass kicked so easily, old man. As we see that Shizuki's own son, Shu, saved his life. Now, if you remember, these two are really not on good terms with each other, but he still saved him. That's progress, as he tells him, I'm helping my good-for-nothing dad do some good for society. I am your son, after all. And it's here Shu realizes who they're fighting and becomes hesitant, as he says, that's Kageyama Shigeo. He's lost control of his powers, and something has been released from within him. Shu becomes hesitant realizing that, saying, I don't know how I feel about fighting Ritsu's brother. As Shizuki tells him that being gentle in this situation won't do anything. We have to stop him. As Mob throws another psychic energy wave at Shizuki and hits him directly, but this time it was planned. As he gets up and says, I just needed to borrow some of his powers to make up for the massive gap. As he tells Sho that this fight has only just begun. Are you going to help me, Sho? And it's here he starts explaining his plan to him, saying how if he continues to unleash energy at this rate, he's going to eventually run out of stamina. We just need to buy some time until he stops. But it's here we actually transition back to Ritsu, and we get to hear his thoughts on this matter right here, as he's running to Mob, as he says, ever since that incident, we've stopped speaking our minds with each other. Feeling responsible changed my brother. He used to get mad and laugh. When we were little, he would let his emotions show. But then, he stopped willingly showing his powers. This version of him was created from being suppressed and locked away. They're connected deep down and cannot be separated. And as Ritsu's running, he comes upon Hanazawa's unconscious body. And alright, I know I'm killing the mood here, but why'd they make Hanazawa so caked up right here? Like, what? Yo, they knew what they're doing. This man is caked the hell up. But it's here we transition back to our father-son duos. They're trying to do everything in their power to slow Mob down till he can wear himself out. But it's not enough, as they realize that, wait, Mob's sucking up all the energy we're throwing at him as well. And Sho starts panicking. He actually starts charging at Mob, but Mob was prepared and hits a giant electric blast at him and would have taken him out if Shizuki didn't jump in front of it and block the attack. As Shizuki says, we can't even buy some time against him. And it's here that Sho wants to flee and get out of here. But Shizuki tells him it's futile. I'm not going to be able to escape wounded like this. But it's here all of a sudden that we see Mob stop his attack, as we realize that Mob is fighting internally to try to stop his powers right now. As Sho says, I guess Ritsu's brother is still fighting eternally. As Shizuki says, wow, you really are strong. As he stands up and tells Sho, you need to run away. There's one way to stop him. I'll become a vessel and absorb all of his energy. I just need to do what he did for me last time. Sho realizes what this means though, as he says, that's insane, you're gonna break. As Shizuki tells him, I'm prepared for this. And as Shizuki walks towards Mob to eventually sacrifice himself, he hears Sho call his name. And he remembers something. We get a flashback scene as we see Sho and his mom there, and we see Shizuki, and he gets remembered about how he abandoned them, how he left them there alone, and how, because of that, he is alone now as well. As he tells Mob, I'm sorry. It seems I can't be as strong as you are. As he turns around and tells Sho, we need to flee together. And I actually love this scene a lot. How they're giving time to the smaller characters of the series, because honestly, he is the big antagonist of our series, of Mob. Like, he's it. He is that guy. And to see that he's been changed so much by Mob, how before he wouldn't have cared whatsoever about Sho. And we saw that. But now he's changed enough to realize I can't abandon them again. I have to be here for him this time, because if I don't, who will be? And I really love this scene. I think this is such a great scene in this episode today. But it's here as we transition to Mob again, we see that the Body Improvement Club has actually found him, because they saw his picture on their phones in the last episode, so they actually ran out through all this pandemonium to go find Mob and help him. And when they find him, they're shocked at what they see as they say, that is Kageyama, right? As Mob actually sends a psychic energy wave towards them and blows their clothes away, because it wouldn't be the Body Improvement Club if they're not in their uniforms, of course. As they say, I believe Kageyama must be in some kind of sleepwalking state right now, which they're not really wrong about, honestly. As they flex real hard and say, we definitely can't leave him alone then. As they charge towards Mob to try to help him, but they do get blown back. But one of them does withstand it and grabs hold of Mob's hand and says, does this mean that Kageyama was this powerful without us even realizing it? But he adds on, we always look up to how you usually are too, Kageyama. But unfortunately, he gets sent flying too, and right before he's about to smack into a steel girder, he gets saved by a psychic, as we hear, so you really are in that state. Nissan. As we see that Ritsu is here at last. But it's still a pretty precarious situation, as Ritsu says, I've always been terrified about this happening. I've been cowering all this time wondering when that alternate version of you would appear again. I hate it. But I'm not scared anymore. I finally figured it out. This isn't a separate, scary part of you. It's a part of you. There's no reason to be scared. Because I'm your younger brother. As we see Mob inside panicking, saying, no, Ritsu, that's not me. And as Ritsu starts approaching him, Mob starts freaking out and desperately tries to control this power. As Ritsu tells him, you don't need to suffer alone like this. As we get a flashback to when they were kids and we realize that Mob's done this his whole life. He's hidden how he's really felt. As Ritsu says, the truth was, I wanted us to talk it out. But looking back on it, I guess you were holding something that you couldn't tell me. But I don't want you to change anymore, Nissan. Don't try to bear this on your own. I'm here for you. As Mob can't control his powers anymore and Ritsu gets entangled in them. As he thinks to himself, are you telling me there's nothing I can do for my brother? As he slowly starts walking towards Ritsu, as Ritsu says, if this continues, if he ends up hurting Tsubame, he won't be able to bear the guilt. And it's here Ritsu realizes a way he can stop Mob as he says, I'm sure some shock will cause a change in him. And right before Mob's about to touch him, Ritsu says that you shouldn't be held down by trauma any longer. As he says, the thing I can do for my brother, as he slaps Mob's hand away, is to continue being the little brother you can talk to at any time. It's to become the brother you can speak your mind with. And throughout this whole episode, we've seen the explosion meter rise and rise further and further until we were at 99%. But it turns out it was Ritsu's. As we see, Ritsu is at 100% and unleashing all of his power right now. And as he knocks the flowers out of Mob's hand, he says, I finally figured out why I wanted powers. It was for this very moment, as he ends up destroying the flowers. But Mob won't be defeated that easily, as he actually puts them back together and puts a barrier around them. As Ritsu's trying desperately to destroy them, using every ounce of energy he has, as we transition to Mob internally as he screams, as he knows what's going to happen. And it's here we see Ritsu get sent flying. And it's here we see on the news that a giant tornado has now appeared within Seasoning City, with Mob at the epicenter of it. But it's here we see as the police are trying to section off this area, we see Reagan running in to help Mob. And as we transition to Ritsu defeated on the ground, he says, I guess this was about all I could do. Please come back to us, Nissan. And it's here we transition to an extremely important scene as we go inside inside of Mob. And we see Mob talking to another version of himself as he says, who are you? Why are you doing this? As it says, I am me. I'm Kageyama Shigeo. Who are you supposed to be? And when he tells the other version of him the same thing, he says, so you're Mob. The fake me. As Mob tells him, I don't need these powers anymore. I need you to disappear from within me. As Shigeo tells him, then you should just disappear. I will live freely. As Mob tells him, I will stop you. And Shigeo says, no one can stop me. And it's here we transition to Reagan and Serizawa approaching the tornado as they say, it might be dangerous to go any further. As Reagan says, but Mob's at the center of that tornado, right? You just need to help me get there, please. As Shirazawa says, I'll do everything I can for you. And they prepare for this final confrontation. And as we transition back to Mob, he asks Shigeo, why are you doing this? And he tells him, do you remember being hit by a car? I couldn't move anymore with just my body alone. That's why I had to move through sheer will. You have a very strong desire to see Tsubame. That is the most important thing to me. But Mob tells him that that's not something you should be doing at the cost of harming others. This isn't normal. But Shigeo tells him, what is normal? Are you trying to invalidate me once again? If you just break and disappear, I won't have to hold back anymore. The next time you wake up, I will be me. As we see pieces of Mob are getting chipped away and pieces of Shigeo are forming. As he says, goodbye, Mob, and our episode ends. And I like this ending quite a lot. Because it's obvious what Mob has to do in this situation. He has to learn to accept himself. Every part of himself. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And he has to embrace it. That's what he has to do. That's his final hurdle in our series. He has to overcome himself. The limitations he's put on himself. And I guess you could say evolve as a person. Which I really love. I really love that metaphor. And I think that's such a perfect way to end Mob. Instead of some huge, big spectacle I feel this is far more appropriate of an ending, and I'm loving this so far. And I can tell immediately, it's gonna be so sad next week. I know it. I just feel it. It's gonna be sad. But it's gonna be incredible at the same time. So you guys let me know what you think of this episode down below as we head into the series finale of Mob. I hate to say that. I don't believe there's not going to be any more after this, guys, because the manga's done. They're done. Unless the author of the series makes like more content for this series, like this is it. This is the end. So let me know what you think is going to happen down below. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a great day, week, month, and year. And until we come to this probably going to be incredible ending, I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.